If you're going through hard times and looking for a way out, it's important to remember that life isn't an Olympic figure skating event. There are no added points for difficulty. You either stay stuck or escape. That's why you deserve to take the path of least resistance. And any voices telling you that's not allowed are not voices invested in your freedom. My name is John Oakes, and this is the Easy Way Out. Today I have something a little different for you. I'm going to be talking to a client. We've checked in with client Wes before, Wesley Thunder, but I've been working with Wes for quite a while now. Whereas today, my guest is a brand new client who I've only spoken to one time before this recording. So you're getting a real live look at what a first coaching session looks like. For context, in the week before this meeting, I had Tina record her food, her calories, her steps, and her weight every day. And we talk about why I ask clients to do that, some of the benefits that we can get out of that. We talk about her experience of that first week and what was difficult about it, what the benefits were. And we also take a look at her work life and how that's contributing stress in ways that she might be able to deal with differently, in ways that will benefit her and everyone around her. And then as we were summing up and selecting some action steps for Tina to focus on in the next couple weeks, we stumbled into a discussion of one of her medical issues, polycystic ovary syndrome or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I think that gives some valuable insight into some of the challenges Tina has been facing and that she's facing as she starts this journey with me as her coach. Before we jump over to that session, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. The major thing I have to announce is that next Saturday, August 27th, I'm going to be presenting my webinar about emotional eating. My working title is Out of Control: How to Let Go of Emotional Eating Without Using Self-Control. And in this webinar, I'm going to lay out some of the biggest reasons why self-control is not an effective mechanism for behavior change. And as we tally up all the ways that self-control fails to make significant change, we can take those failings and ask ourselves, what would a different solution look like if it could accomplish all these things and more? And I will be giving a primer on what that is and how it works. I'm hoping that the webinar will take about 25 to 40 minutes. And so we're going to schedule that for Saturday, August 27th, 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's going to be in the Facebook group. I'm going to be doing the webinar through Facebook Live. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, go now, get into the Facebook group and respond to the event invite so that Facebook will alert you, hopefully before, but definitely when that webinar is going live. And you do want to be there live because at the end of the webinar, I'm going to open up an opportunity that I don't think you're going to want to miss. And because of the nature of it, I can only open it to so many people. Okay, without further ado, here is my first session with Tina. All right, so today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a first session with a brand new client named Tina. Tina, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Welcome to coaching. Welcome to podcasting. Yes.
First time for everything, right?
Yeah, you're getting two firsts at the same time. So just for context, Tina wanted to come on at the beginning of September. So technically that's when she will officially start. But I thought, hey, why not do our first session now in mid-August? We usually meet every 2 weeks anyways. My normal clients do. So this actually gets us kind of an extra session to hit the ground running. And also it's going to give us the chance to share more of the coaching process with people who haven't done coaching yet. Maybe they're interested in it. Maybe they're just, they'll just learn a lot from what we talk about today.
I hope so. I hope I learn a lot from what we talk about today. So
heal the people, Tina. Heal the people.
I love it. I'm on board. Let's do this.
Okie dokie. So, Tina, you decided to just go ahead and start losing all the weight. You're taking a lot of the fun out of this for me. Just going to blast out. No, that's a jokey way of saying good job.
Yeah. To be clear, I haven't done a lot different other than I started writing down everything I was eating. I had already kind of started to make some healthier choices food wise. I decided, you know what? Good, bad, or ugly, let's just write down what I'm eating and be honest with myself about it because I've done that previously before, had some success. My partner is currently on a journey as well to lose weight and regain some health. And so I, in order to be supportive, I thought let's just do this now. And then I had already been very mindful that I needed to start moving. But in terms of working out, all I've done is literally just tried to move 30 minutes a day minimum, like as much as I can. So yeah, haven't done a lot of crazy training. I am a little bit surprised that weight has started to come off just from doing those two things, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and for context for you and everybody else, usually clients fall into one of two camps where they either the moment they sit down across from me, they start losing weight like crazy, and other people they it takes a little while for the actual
Yeah.
scale to start going down, but about, 3 months in, everybody's in about the same place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to be clear, I am a large human. I'm weighing in, kind of like an overweight dude at this point. And so cutting back from, 3,000 calories a day to, 2,200 by accident, it's literally just like that's just what I happen to eat that day. That's at least gotten the ball rolling for me. So
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get to talking about your exact caloric intake later on. Do you mind if we share just some basic stats about you just for
please
reference?
do.
Because
Please do. I
because
think that's helpful.
you are really like a fastball down the middle of kind of my average audience member, average client. Did you just have a birthday?
I actually have a birthday coming up, so I will be
Oh, okay.
47 in December.
Okay,
So,
right on. So you
yeah,
still got a few more months of runway with 46. So we'll just stick with
exactly.
46.
Exactly.
And you weigh started out at 348, which I swear to God is the exact average weight of previous clients, people who've competed in challenges. That is the exact
Nice.
average that comes through every time. Two different challenges took everybody's starting weight. The average was 348. So
Nice. That's
that is
hilarious.
men and women, the whole gamut. And then also 5'8". So just a little
Yep.
taller than average. But if you take the whole audience out there, 5'8" is probably going to be the average because the average for a man is what, like 5'9.5". So,
Yeah.
you know, 50-50. Yeah. So you are our every woman.
Awesome. Happy to be the every woman. That's amazing.
And also just for the audience, for context, we are referring to Tina's ATS, which is her accountability and tracking sheet. That's just a fancy term for
Mhm.
a shared Google Excel type thing that we track weight, we track calories. It shows us some running averages. So just
Mhm.
any one day doesn't really mean much. It's really what's going on in the bigger picture statistically, gives us a lot more precise and accurate information to work with and helps us make better decisions. So we have different columns, and in one of the columns, two of the columns, I have training and cardio. And in these columns, we start to do a little bit more, I guess what you might call subjective note taking. You kind of just write down whatever. The other columns are just purely numerical inputs. So, Tina, with training, you said one day of like 3 or 4 days ago, you did 22 minutes. So, was that
Mhm.
some sort of weight training?
I believe so. Yeah, I should probably look at my tracker here. I actually think I have it still. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, I did like there was one day that I did like 20 or 22 minutes of cardio and then I also did 22 minutes roughly of just a really good 4 or 5 exercise circuit training. So, yeah, yeah, so that was lifting, that was weight training.
Right on. And then with the cardio column, you've been putting in
Mhm.
quite a bit of cardio, especially for somebody just starting out. You've got
Mhm.
you got 6 days where you did a good chunk. And well, any chunk is
Yeah.
good. Okay. That's the
Yeah.
motto of Oaks coaching. Any chunk is a good chunk.
Well, and one of those zeros, I just forgot to wear my tracker. So I couldn't prove anything. So I didn't put it in there.
In that case, you
So,
can just take your best guess. It's okay.
can I take a best guess?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not the IRS. This is-
Well, I mean, if you want to audit me, that's fine. I want my numbers to be on point. So,
yeah,
yeah,
as long as you're honest. I mean, this whole thing depends on your honesty, anyways.
exactly.
So I'll
Yeah.
take your best guess. If you're like, I think it was about 25 minutes, then just write 25 minutes.
Okay.
For these various types of cardio, were you all doing the same thing?
No. So sometimes I am like at the gym and I'm on a treadmill or elliptical or bike. Sometimes I am just going outside and walking and doing a good brisk outdoor walk. And some of those have been just me getting up from my desk at work and, missing the workout in the morning. And so wearing comfortable shoes that I can walk into work and then just going and walking around my office for 20, 25 minutes. That's about the max I can like get away with not being in the actual office because I'm kind of the boss. Um, and some of them, like the one yesterday, that's a kind of a mishmash of things where it was probably 20 minutes of indoor bike. I have like a one of those, like the little like mini bike with just the pedals and it's got a resistance wheel on the middle, and you can order them on Amazon for like $50.
Yeah,
You know
like
what
they
I'm
just
talking
sit on the
about?
floor.
Yeah, they sit on the floor and you can
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sit in a straight back chair. I didn't have time to get to the gym, and so I did like 20 minutes just to kind of get some stress out and get my heart
Great.
moving in the morning. And then I took a walk in the middle of the day, and then I was swimming at my apartment pool with some friends last night, and they were just standing in the water talking. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be in the water, we're going to start treading water. And so I did like a core treading water cardio thing. And next thing I knew, my watch is like, hey, you've got all this movement in for the day. And I was like, go me, fight win.
That is awesome. Yeah, so
So,
when we first spoke, I kind of lined out the basic idea of
hmm
my philosophy toward increasing movement and slowly decreasing calories is to not really set a target and then figure out, okay, what do we got to remove to hit that target. I think that's a little bit backwards. The metaphor I always give is like playing Jenga. You don't
hmm
ever go into Jenga with a strategy. You go
right.
in with sensitivity to the tower that's this game,
That's already
and
there. Yeah.
you start poking around to see what wants to come loose, and those are the blocks you move. And the problem with a lot of programs is they don't allow or teach people how to see themselves and become more aware of the easy opportunities they have to start shaving off, hundreds of calories fairly easily without even really getting
hmm
into a lot of the more hairy issues that they have with sort of compulsive eating or other behaviors, or feeling, just very exhausted and lazy and unmotivated, just how people often phrase it themselves. Not that I'm
Right.
not that I'm criticizing.
Well, and like I think my struggle has been like, how do I get an hour every morning before work to go to the gym when I don't necessarily, I sometimes I am getting, phone calls at 6:30, 7 o'clock handling emergencies. 2 days ago is a great example. I was handling emergencies. I didn't even get to my office until 10:30, not because I was sleeping in, but because that's how long it took to actually like get people to leave me alone so I could get ready for work and like drive to the office. And so building in little chunks of time and like giving myself permission for that, I think has been really helpful the last like week or two. It kind of took the pressure off, made me enjoy it a little bit more. So,
Fantastic. And that's so key, because if we allow these things to start small, we can start them in chunks that we can do and enjoy, right? The first
yeah.
time you ever, I don't know, played an instrument that you ended up becoming very proficient in and loved playing, you probably didn't sit down for 3 hours and tell yourself you had to master the mandolin the
Right.
first time. No, you just dinked around, blink, 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 and you did some
Yeah.
like strumming, pretending like you're playing music, and then you put it away. And over time,
Well,
you actually can develop more of an actual skill.
yeah, I only play the radio, so I actually was pretty proficient at that right away, but I get where you're going with that for sure. So, I play the radio better than anybody I know. So, pretty exciting.
So when you note your cardio and
hmm
your resistance training, you have it listed out as like 85 minutes. You can just go 85 m space, type in what you were doing, right? So if
Oh,
you were
okay.
doing, so like I do little codes, right? And we can establish our own shorthand. So TM,
Mm-hmm.
I know that's treadmill, right?
Okay.
OW, outside walking. IW,
Okay.
inside walking.
Okay.
And so you could just do little. I mean, usually elliptical is E.
Yeah.
It's usually one of 4 or 5 things, and we'll know what we're talking
Okay.
about. Same for training. You don't have to go into exhaustive detail, but if you just say like body weight circuit, that's great. Just
Okay.
just anything there is helpful because it also helps me identify what you're doing and what you're gravitating toward. And it sounds silly to think that I'm going to tell
Right.
you what you're doing when you are the one who wrote it all down. But it happens so often that people sometimes don't realize that, hey, I've actually been doing that quite a lot. It was more than I realized. And we actually have to bring awareness to it for the client to see, like, oh man, maybe I actually like doing the rower. Weird. Because in my
Okay.
head, I
Yeah.
don't like that. But yet I've been doing it. But when I stop overthinking it, I'm just doing it more. It sounds silly, but it sounds crazy, but it happens all the time.
Okay. Awesome.
So, how did you feel about tracking? What kind of emotions came up?
You know, um, there was a day that there was some shame involved, like in terms of just tracking calorie intake, like on the ninth, and we'd gone to a baseball game, and was like, okay, we're gonna have permission to eat whatever we want. We'll make sure we track it, and it was so much. And then I also got like horribly, horribly ill during the night, like my body just couldn't. At that point, it had been about 8 days of eating fairly clean because I started kind of that journey right around the 1st of August. And I was like, oh, well, my body didn't like that. And maybe we don't do that anymore. Right? Like maybe we be aware. For the most part, I felt in control of my choices more. Like instead of I would term, and I actually talked to my therapist about this, that I would term myself a lazy eater. And
Mm-hmm.
she termed it as more of, that's a form of binge eating, where I've never had a binging purging issue, but I have had a like lazy healthy issue. And she's like, when you're in your lazy cycle, which has been going on for a couple of years now, you're just eating whatever's available. You're not putting a lot of thought into how you're fueling your body. And so you are just like grabbing whatever is quick and easy. So that's translating into like prepackaged stuff, frozen stuff, fast food, like that kind of thing, right? And just like going out to eat a lot. And tracking all of that has kind of made me not pull back as much as just be so aware of what I'm choosing that it's been a lot easier for me to go, oh, well, I'm going out to dinner tonight. Let's eat really clean, in the morning and afternoon and really watch any snacking so that I don't hit the end of the day and feel just like I can't even move and bloated and gross. So tracking that, the calories and tracking like the fitness journey in terms of the minutes moved, I like a lot of people, I work in an office, so fairly sedentary, and just being aware of like taking time every day to get up from my desk and walk around has been great. Like I actually feel so much better, and my stress level has decreased considerably. So that's been good, and my employees are thankful for that because I'm not quite so snappy. And tracking my weight every day, that was a hard one for me. I'm not gonna lie. When you've got those big numbers, it's really, really hard to step on a scale every day. But what I'm liking about the way we're doing this is I can see a pattern. And when things jump up, I see them go back down pretty quickly. Like, right. And so I'm starting to be more aware of the weight fluctuations on a daily thing as opposed to getting discouraged because I was down one day and then I'm up 2 pounds the next day. So I'm just like, well, I'm obviously failing. So now I'm going to eat whatever I want and not work out. Right. Because what I'm doing is not working. So that's been really an interesting journey in changing my mindset towards scales and knowing what I weigh. Because I've been in a little bit of size denial and weight denial for a while,
Hmm.
obviously. So, nobody gets to be almost 350 pounds without some form of like, oh, it's not that bad. Or, yeah, I weigh a lot, but I'm just a big person. Or, yeah, I weigh a lot, but, I'm still smaller than so and so. Right. So just having that like focus and accountability that I have to just know for myself, that's been really good.
Yeah, you said a lot of really good stuff there. And just for context, with most clients, I do ask them to start tracking calories and weight every day, starting out, and also steps. The first reason for that is that it's the easiest way to identify what your baseline lifestyle was
Mhm.
that was creating and maintaining your weight. So this gives
Mhm.
us a very real picture of where you're at and what's been contributing to your weight, and it shows us exactly better than an online calculator generally
Mhm.
where your quote unquote maintenance calories are, or where your baseline activities. Baseline is my term for kind of the collection of all these things, maintenance calories, but in the
Yeah.
context of how much activity, right?
Yeah.
So your maintenance calories, well, if you stop walking for 2 days, on those days, your maintenance calories was a lot lower than the days where you were very active. So
Mhm.
if a client has like a real sensitive relationship to the scale or to calorie tracking, I don't force people into that. It's something that's just where we start.
Yeah.
Wherever the resistance is, wherever the obstacles are, that's where the coaching goes. So I just want to make
Yeah,
that
for
clear because
sure.
I know that this is a tricky topic for many people.
Mhm.
And as you're seeing, you don't take the sting out of the fluctuations of the scale. Well, it's not the scale fluctuating, it's our body weight fluctuating. The
Mhm.
scale is constant. We don't take the sting out of that by getting on the scale more infrequently. We take the
Right.
sting out of it by getting on the scale every day, just like we would check our speedometer when we're going down the road. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
mean anything. Like, we check our speedometer so much that somebody on social media, if it had anything to do with health, would be like, "This is obsessive. You're telling people to be
Mhm.
neurotic." It's like that. There's a lot of things that we do dozens and dozens of times a day to just check in with our objective reality to make sure that we are safe and in good standing and going in the right direction
Yeah.
for
Well,
what we want.
for me in the past, in terms of that obsessiveness, I was hitting a point a few years ago where I would weigh myself regularly, but I was like almost in a dehydrated state because I was very aware of like if I'm drinking too much water, I'm going to weigh more. So I'm just not going to
Yeah.
drink water and then I'll weigh less, which is horribly unhealthy. And so what I'm liking about this system is it's just a number. It's a metric
Yep.
number of where we're starting from. It doesn't there's no like self-worth value to this number. It's
Yes.
an honest number. It is what it is. It doesn't define my worth as a human, but it's a valuable number for me to know because you know what? My weight is causing my knees to hurt, my back to hurt,
Mm-hmm.
sleep apnea, like all these other health issues. I need to be honest about that number with myself, right?
Yeah, people talk about how important it is for there to be weight acceptance and for people to be accepting of
Mhm.
their bodies. But to accept something, you have to be willing to see it.
Yeah.
And knowing, putting a numerical value on your weight, you could argue that that's not an essential part of accepting your body. And I would definitely entertain that argument.
Mhm.
However, there's so much valuable information that comes with that awareness that it
Mhm.
adds to your acceptance. It makes your acceptance more full,
Right.
and it allows you to fully root yourself in reality. Because, like you mentioned earlier, that you were, telling yourself various stories about your weight
Mhm.
and that were helping you be blind to it. Because why would your brain want to be blind to something that it doesn't have an answer for? It's
Right.
obvious. Nobody likes to be asked questions. Like, if you sat me down in a college level calculus class, like, I like math. I'm good at math, but I
Mhm.
didn't take calculus. So all of a sudden I'm going to be in a situation where it's like, I don't know the answer to what you're asking me. So I'm going to zone out now. And that's what our
Right.
brains do when we have various issues that we're at a loss. And it makes sense to just be blind to these things because it's a form of suffering to see it when
Mhm.
you're judging yourself for not being able to fix it. And
Right.
that's really the suffering. It's not the reality, it's that self-judgment. What does this mean about me? What does this mean about my future? That's really what's so painful about seeing it. But once you are able to ground yourself in reality and say, I weigh what I weigh because of how I'm eating, how I'm living, and the way I'm treating myself, the way I'm talking to myself,
Mhm.
which means that if I were to shift those things, the weight would shift. And it
Yeah.
in a very in very broad strokes, that is what happens. So as far as your calorie intake, it started out that first day, the day you made yourself sick, right under 3,000 calories,
Yeah.
and then after that, you pretty much just hung out right in the 2,200 average range.
Hmm.
What would you say has been your average daily calories? Would you guess for the last few months?
So, you know, I think I operate in extremes where sometimes, depending on my workday and how stressed out I am, my calories would be incredibly low, where I would maybe eat a low amount of calories in the morning and then not eat again until the evening. And then I would eat like 12 or 1400 calories in the evening. So even though my caloric intake would be maybe 17, 1800 calories, then, but they were all in like one big meal at the very end of the day. And then I'd go to bed, which is horrible. And you don't sleep well. I didn't feel good. Or it's the extreme opposite where I'm just kind of eating everything in sight. So literally I feel like my metabolism and my body like had no idea when to expect food. And so it was like I was kind of I feel like I've been at war with myself for the last, I would say year, with my eating for sure.
What do you mean by the idea that you've been at war with yourself?
Well, you start out every day with like this plan of, okay, I'm going to pack, lunch for the day. I'm going to eat breakfast before work. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then as you get discouraged or as you get stressed, that stops being a priority. And so the next thing you know, you're eating out for lunch every day because it's easier. And I'd love to say that I'm eating out by going somewhere really healthy and getting a garden salad and a protein and calling it good. But fact is, I'm not, right? Like I'm wanting like the big sub sandwich or, something that's, going to give me just that comfort of like my belly's full. Now I can deal with whatever. I think I use the excuse of being hangry an awful lot. Like, oh, I'm hangry. I need to eat and then I'll feel better. Well, like there's some other mental health things that I'm like, oh, maybe I need to address that, as to why that triggered me. Right. But I would think on average for like a weekly average, if I had to like break down all the calories I eat in a week and divide it by 7, I would guess I've probably been hanging out right about 2,800 calories a day.
Okay. Why do you think you've been able to hang out closer to 2,200 this week?
So I've been listening to what my body wants a little bit more, attentively. I kind of made the decision that I would always eat something for breakfast and be aware of what I was putting in terms of that carb protein balance. I
Great.
know from myself that I can't eat a heavy carb breakfast because I will be super hungry within an hour, hour and a half. Like my blood sugar levels just go wonky on me.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to incorporate more of a protein factor in there first thing in the morning.
Wonderful.
Um, I've literally just because, and then every day I will, before I even like get out of bed, I will wake up, I'll think about what food I've got in the house for the day, and I'll plan out what I'm going to eat for the day. And that's just what I eat. And that's been helpful. And I've also been forcing myself to drink so much more water. Like I literally was living on Diet Coke and coffee, and I'd maybe drink 1 glass of water a day or 2 glasses of water
Hmm.
a day. And now I'm drinking maybe 90 ounces a day, 90 to 100. I'm still having a Diet Coke every day and a coffee every day, but I'm also drinking the
Okay.
water,
And
which I
just
think has
for
been helpful to stay fuller.
and for those playing at home, that's roughly 3 quarts or 3 liters of water.
Yeah, yeah. And I also increased my fiber intake first thing in the morning. Like I started doing just a fiber supplement half hour before I eat breakfast. Like it's just like it's not Metamucil, but it's that kind of like where you mix it with
Okay.
water and you drink it and then afterwards you drink 16 ounces of water and then just let that sit for 30 minutes. And that I think that has helped curb that craving for like the heavy like processed carbohydrates that I always because I'm like a sweets junkie. I love a good baked
Hmm.
good. And that's enabled me to kind of just like not want it so much. And I've still had like, I've had a couple days where I've had ice cream, in the last 2 weeks. I've had, it's not like I'm not eating like a treat now and again, but I'm also like very aware of if I'm eating it every day, it's a food group, not a treat. And so
Hmm.
that it's like, okay, well, I'm going to eat that today. That's what I want, as opposed to just I deserve that for some reason.
That's great. Yeah, you're doing a lot of stuff that, with some clients, it takes some time to walk them
Mhm.
to that point where they can realize that no, there's no cheats, there's no treats, there's just the food you eat and the food you
Mhm.
choose not to eat. That's it. All these other designations are ways that we can start getting sideways on ourselves. But we end up doing silly stuff when we have all those unnecessary qualifications and categories. And it all comes down to this
Yeah.
the original sin of projecting unnecessary meaning onto food, which is good
Mhm.
food versus bad food. And when we
Yeah.
can sort of let go of that, food can just be food. And then what are we left with? What do I want to eat? What makes me feel good? And that
Yeah.
encourages us to rely on our own feedback systems, be better at listening to our body. And yeah, that's all these things that you're doing. That's really fantastic. Not really restricting a little bit of ice cream, and like you also mentioned earlier, realizing that, hey, I'm gonna eat out later tonight. I want to have, or later today, I want to be able to have more leeway with for that
Mhm.
calorically. So I'm gonna adjust my eating throughout the day. And that's also very helpful because let's say 2 months from now, you just want to reduce calories one day, right?
Mhm.
Like, I know my body's going to be hungry, but I know that it's just what the body does. It always asks for food because it's like money. Like, there's never
Mhm.
enough money, right? And the body's always going to
Right.
ask
You're
for
never
food,
like, "Oh,
whether
I'm good." Yeah.
right, yeah. It's got a lot in the bank account, but it still wants more. In that scenario, these days where you budget your calories and you save them up for a bigger meal at the end of the day, well, that gives you an incentive to do something that really I would hope everybody could learn to do in their weight loss journey, which is to make friends with hunger, to realize that
Yeah.
this is a feeling I'm having because of the choices I'm making. Nothing is wrong. And this
Mhm.
feeling is an indicator that my body is having to dip into stored body fat for energy. So, without
Mhm.
going to extremes,
Mhm.
this is the feeling of losing weight to some extent. This is the feeling
Yeah.
of being in a caloric deficit. Now, some days that might be the same caloric deficit, but it feels a little bit different. Some days are easier, some days are harder. Some days we didn't sleep well, so we're hungrier. Some
Mhm.
days we're more stressed out, so we're hungrier. Yada yada. But generally speaking, learning to budget your calories is tiptoeing you into the shallow end of learning more and more hunger management techniques. And that's you and just anybody listening to this.
Yeah, well, and what I will say is, I was an athlete, as in my younger days. Like, I've always been a good eater. I'm from that generation where you're a good eater and you're going to clean your plate. And so, I've never had like a food scarcity issue or anything like that. I didn't realize I was overeating, until the first time I decided to look at my calories and realize that, oh, maybe I don't need 4 servings of cereal in the morning.
Hmm.
But I also think that some people have a bigger appetite where they just will feel hunger a little more intently than others. And I think I'm one of those people. Yeah, like when I feel hungry, I feel hungry. And that's where kind of the drinking water and also having more fiber in my diet has, like, I think really kind of helped figure that out, but also just not having a reward for things. Not getting to the end of my day and saying, "Oh, I worked out today. I'm going to have a reward." Like, and that reward's going to be food. Well,
Right.
maybe my reward is going to be, I can turn my phone off and don't pay attention to my job for 30 minutes, or my
Yeah.
reward's going to be that I go take a walk or a swim or something. And so that's been a really interesting thing to navigate. Instead of trying to like fuel with more food because I worked out, to give myself a different kind of like pat on the back at the end of the day. If that
Yeah, we
makes
do
any
that a
sense at
lot.
all.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%. We often do this thing where we're like, it's the equivalent of, hey, I'm in debt, so I'm gonna save my money. And so
Mhm.
I save money all day. At the end of the day, I'm like, great, I saved money. I should reward myself. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
spend money.
I'm gonna
And
go buy
you end
something.
up spending more than you saved that day and actually put
Yeah.
yourself further in debt.
Yeah.
Doesn't really
Yeah.
make a whole lot of sense. So, one of the great things about intentionally trying to lose weight is that it forces you to confront the way you've been using food as rewards for things that either didn't require rewards or definitely didn't require food as a reward. And oftentimes when you find other rewards, you're like, oh, this is actually more rewarding
Mhm.
than the food, both
Yeah.
in the sense that it's actually giving to me, not taking. And it's actually putting me more in touch with who I am, my passions, my creativity, my desire to move than food ever could.
Right. Right.
So, any other surprising things come up during the last week or two? Any questions you have about going forward?
I think my big question is how do you manage that mindset of so the food tracker I'm using or like the food journal I'm using is called Lose It. It's just an app. You can
Mm-hmm.
get it for free. I think it's pretty good just because it has like literally everybody has inputted everything in here. So like you can go to almost
Yep.
any restaurant and it's just right there and it gives you a pretty accurate count. I always kind of try and guess a little higher than what it probably actually is just to hold myself accountable to that. But how do you get past like the I worked out, so my app is telling me, "Oh, you worked out, you can have this many extra calories." So I'm currently choosing not to eat them because I'm trying to go more into a
Good.
deficit. Is there a way to kind of mentally manage that a little bit? Because there are days that I am hungrier than others. Like last night, I went to bed and I was like, I am freaking hungry, but I didn't need to eat any more calories. I'd already eaten enough for the day. But I just was like, my body was saying, you're hungry because you just treaded water for 60 minutes. Well, okay. So how do you get through that? How do you, that would be my
Yeah,
big one today.
we're kind of talking about some different aspects of hunger management and mindset. I would say, on a technical standpoint, yes, everybody, when you're using a calorie tracker, if that calorie tracker is telling you how many calories you've burned that day, it is wrong. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If it's right, it's just lucky. It's a broken clock is right twice a day kind of thing. Even the most expensive fitness wearable, your Fitbit 5000, whatever, it's not there yet. The technology isn't there yet. There's still a wide amount of variance with the accuracy of these tools. We'll get there.
Okay.
A lot of companies are investing a lot of money in R&D for this stuff because people do have such a thirst for this information. And hey, when that's rock solid, I will definitely be right there at the forefront pushing everybody to get more data. However, in this case, yeah, we just want to ignore anything an app is telling you. And even if it was telling you accurately exactly how many calories you were burning per day, you don't yeah you're putting money in the bank, so you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
use that as an excuse to take more out.
Okay.
So then the question is, well, how do I maintain my overall caloric deficit in a sustainable and enjoyable, hopefully, way
Right.
when I am having varying levels of activity? Right. Well,
Okay.
if I look at your chart, and there's some days where you do. Was there a day where there was 1900? Yeah, 2 days in the
Yeah.
1900 range. One day, oh, one day quite low, under 1500, and then you have days as high as 2500.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a range of 1,000 calories in
Mm-hmm.
this last week. Not
Mm-hmm.
a problem.
Okay.
Like it's not a problem at all. If the average calories are coming out to be about the same, and you're finding that, hey, on Mondays I tend to be more stressed out, so I'm not going to do a big workout first thing
Mm-hmm.
Monday morning because that's just going to add a bunch of systemic stress to my body. If you do a light workout, maybe that helps you be less stressed the rest of the
Okay.
day on Monday. So it's just be strategic about the output you're doing. This day where you have 85 minutes of cardio, it was light, low
Mm-hmm.
impact cardio, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit different. But if I
Yep.
saw you go from sessions that were anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes, let's say, of walking, and then I see one day where you walked for like 21 hours straight, I'm going to be like, whoa, 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 hold on.
Okay.
Right? We don't want to get overzealous on
Okay.
one day because we feel the spirit of the tiger inside of us, and we want
Right.
to all of a sudden just start running and running Forrest Gump style.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get when you felt like crap for so long that when you
Mm-hmm.
finally get a nice burst of energy, and you're moving and you're like, yes, I knew I could do this. I knew that this was in me. I knew that I had the desire to move, and you're doing it and you're happy, you can easily just go overboard. And it's good to keep in mind, like, yes, I want to, it's the exact same thing with ice cream, right?
Yeah.
Eating ice cream, exercising, same thing. I want to be able to have ice cream from time to time. So that's why I'm not going to overdo it
Right.
because of ice cream. And that's what moderation allows you. That's the gift of moderation, is I'm going to moderate this so I can keep having it. And it's a bit similar with exercise.
Okay.
So I'm going to make sure that I don't do so much exercise that I'm going to be sore tomorrow and not able to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Always do an activity, especially if you're trying to do it every day. Do an amount that will allow you to show up tomorrow and do it again,
Okay.
to where you're just getting, a few steps more every day, not these huge leaps. It's okay to have variation, undulating days, where some days you're, at 40 minutes, some days you're at 20, one day you're at 5, the next day you're at,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But generally speaking, yeah, we want to let that average slowly climb up, because this also helps prevent injury, overuse,
Yeah.
soreness, muscle, connective tissue issues. And the other side of that is that if you're not having wild swings in activity, you're less likely to have wild swings in your hunger levels that stress
Right.
you out, that either cause you to have to white knuckle your regular caloric deficit, or be like, worked out, really hard. Maybe I should give my body a little bit more food,
Okay.
but what do I do? And then you get into that what should I do conversation,
Okay.
and that's exhausting. And
Yeah.
like deciding what to eat when you're in a calorie deficit, like what should I have? What could I do? In the moment when you're hungry, trying to do that math, it's so stressful. And this is one of the reasons people end up giving up on calorie counting. Not that I think people need to do it their entire lives or anything like that, but if you're committed to it for a certain window to
Mm-hmm.
get everything you can out of it, you want to be able to do it without stressing yourself the hell out. And
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing, where you make the decisions in the morning before you've ever picked up a fork,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want to do. You want to have this
Okay.
decided anytime previously, that's not in the moment. And if you don't overdo exercise, that's one more variable that we can remove from the equation that would cause that sort of spike in hunger that might throw you off kilter.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes
Any
sense
other
to me.
any other questions?
I don't think so right now. I will say that I noticed last night that I was walking back from the pool. It's about a quarter of a mile from my apartment front door to my clubhouse where my pool is. 3 months ago, that like I would get done, and my back would be like killing me by the time I got to my front door. Right, hauling this amount of weight around is hard, and I was coming off of a leg injury, so I'd had about I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks that I wasn't doing much of anything. And last night I was basically skipping from the pool back to my apartment. I just felt really, really good. And so
Awesome.
my concern is that I don't want to submarine myself. Like I want to continue to feel good. And I think you kind of just addressed something that I didn't know I was feeling, which was, okay, well, if 85 minutes yesterday made me feel that good, what would,
Yep.
what
Yeah.
could I do next,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
Been there.
so still just kind of keep it in that exercise and that moderation and let my body adapt to it. Because the other mentality I have is that I'm a former athlete, and so it's that train
Yes.
hard, feel the pain. And I'm 46, almost 47 years old. I can't do that anymore. And so this is a really weird wake up call the last couple weeks.
I mean, even if you're trying to train a child to do something, you don't start out with huge bursts of activity,
Right.
because they're going to burn out on it. They're going to be like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
You let them, play around with it and create a different sort of emotional connection with the activity. And then it can just become habitual. And then the improvement starts to become a result of habits that we've installed by getting rid of old programming and conditioning and negative belief, habits that correlate with our deepest values, so that if we're just getting everything out of the way, we're able to do things that we like, do the things that we want to do, and do them in such a way that we can continually get better every day. That getting better is something that your body's going to do. You don't
Okay.
have to do that. You just have to not stop your body from getting fitter.
Right.
Because if you go
Right.
for walks every day, you're going to get better at walking.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
that's really the trick with all this. So much of our society and fitness culture is trying to fix you, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to take all the backpacks full of bricks off of you so
Mm-hmm.
that easy things can be easy. And obviously the journey is going to have challenges, but we can make this a lot easier on ourselves.
Okay. Awesome.
So let's think of some
Awesome.
action steps for the next couple weeks. You
Sure.
mentioned work stress.
Yeah.
Is there anything we could do to mitigate work stress better? Is there a boundary? Is there a, hey, don't call me before 8 a.m.?
So there's definitely it's a boundary issue, where I just need to get a lot more comfortable not being a people pleaser and saying no, I can't solve that problem, by offering up myself and my free time. Because what's become very clear in the last month is me working harder doesn't actually solve the problems that are going on. It
No.
just makes me work harder and feel more discouraged. And so it's definitely a me issue. Like I need to just set that boundary and not take the phone calls after 5:30 in the afternoon when I'm done
Mm-hmm.
working, and not and put work in that on that shelf every night when I leave, and just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of it is I run a driving school, and it's summertime, and so we're at the end of our peak season, and so ideally by the 1st of September things really simmer down to a manageable stress
Ah,
level,
okay. Well, that's
which
good
is
to know.
really nice. Yeah, it's very cyclical that way. So,
You mentioned earlier that when you make healthier decisions, eating out when you're quote unquote hangry,
mhm.
that your employees benefit from that.
Yes.
And I think that it's with people pleasing. The podcast that I lost last week was
Mhm.
basically about this very fact that so often when we are trying to make sure everybody else is happy with us, we're actually acting in sort of an egoic way. It's weirdly
Yeah.
egotistical to be a people pleaser, and often we're not helping. And
Right.
by letting people figure things out on their own, deal with what is in their sort of milieu, in their little
Mhm.
corral of all the work that's being done, it forces them to use their creativity, to use their intelligence, all their gifts, and it actually helps bring more out of people. Otherwise, we can just create learned helplessness, the sort of martyr complex, where
Yeah.
I'm so afraid that things won't go right that I slowly end up becoming that person that is. We often never think of it that way, but we start to be controlling
Mhm.
because we're afraid that things will fall apart. But the underlying egotistical or egoic premise is that they will fall apart if we don't personally keep the world spinning and keep all the
Yeah.
continents and the oceans in place and make sure all the clouds are moving just right, and it's really
Yeah.
silly, but it's really hard to connect with that reality.
Well, but it's absolutely true, and that's learning is hard when you're an old human and you've been a workaholic your whole life, and realizing I can't do that anymore. I need to just have a better work-life balance. And so that's kind of where we're at today. So setting those boundaries, I think I can definitely work on that and do better with that for sure.
And do you know from your tracking, do you know how much protein you're taking in right now?
I'd have to look back. I know that my diet seems to be about, I don't know, 45% like complex carb based, and then like 28 fats, and then the rest protein. But I don't know how many grams. I haven't been keeping track of that.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to add a column to your sheet
Okay.
for protein. And if you can, if you want to start tracking that, go ahead. You
Yeah.
don't have to right now if it's too much. But I think that you getting more protein, especially, you're an athlete, you're going to be
Hmm.
working your body more. That protein is going to get you the essential building blocks that your body needs to repair, recover,
Okay.
and you want to feel better from moving around, and get your
Yeah.
protein. It's the most highly satiating macro. It's going to help you feel good
Okay.
throughout the day. So yeah, that's another thing that, if you wanted to do a protein goal for the next couple weeks, just
I
kind of
think
figure out
that
where
would
you've been
be,
at and then just try to
yeah.
increase it by like 10%.
That I think that would be really beneficial. And just kind of as a side note, so like I have an insulin resistance due to some female health issues, increasing protein was always going to be the best scenario for me, but for whatever reason, I haven't been accountable to that. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
for me, that would really be helpful for sure.
Yeah. And are you comfortable sharing what
Yeah.
condition you struggle with? Because it's very common.
Yeah, it's a very common condition. It's polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, it escalated very quickly into severe endometriosis and a
Oh, wow.
cancer scare that required a complete hysterectomy and going through menopause at 40. And so, when that happens in the female body, all of your hormones shift and change, and your metabolism shifts and changes, and you may recover from your PCOS symptoms, which can be anything from weight gain around your midsection to insulin resistance to hair growth, like random hair growth. For me, the insulin resistance and the weight gain around the middle of my body, like around my stomach area, that's been the big. Those were the big things. And then that combined with some lazy eating and some, traumas and different things that I went through in the last 5, 6 years kind of compounded to get me where I am today. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very common for women, especially if you have to do early menopause. Your entire metabolism just kind of goes a little haywire on you because your body doesn't have those hormones anymore to regulate anything.
Yeah, and there is a male menopause. It's probably not as
Mm-hmm.
severe as female menopause. We also see how when women start to develop insulin issues or they're carrying too much weight, they start developing that android fat around
Mm-hmm.
the traditionally, where males store fat, and men will
Correct.
start to store gynoid fat around their hips and thighs more and more
Yeah.
as their testosterone gets messed up, their testosterone to estrogen balance. It's all the same hormones. We all
Yeah.
we all have the same
Yeah.
hormones.
Yep.
And if you look around, if you next time you're at the beach, take a real look and ask yourself: are there men going through a
Yeah.
similar process as women? I think you'll see enough boobs to to feel fairly confident in what I'm talking about, right? I mean, let's be real.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think that's something that most men don't even realize is happening to them. Like that's not
Yeah.
something that's ever like that. This is the first time I've ever like I knew that was a thing from biology classes and things like that. But I mean, you don't really hear men talk about that topic very often
Yeah,
either.
and
So,
it's kind of a toxic masculinity, patriarchal thing that, oh, the women have hormonal issues,
hmm,
and men, we don't have that. It's like, well,
yeah,
biologically, you do, and maybe it's not exactly the same, but it's all the same
yeah,
hormones in different
yeah.
balances. But it's the relationship between testosterone and estrogen that is like the biggest one, and
Hmm.
then we have a number of downstream things from there.
But people don't realize that your testosterone and your estrogen are regulating your pancreas, which is regulating your insulin. Like it's all working together. And so when something shifts, either with if you're a man or a woman, apparently, it's gonna impact the way that you gain weight and also the way that you lose weight. And I haven't really other than starvation in the last 10 years been able to crack the code as to how to lose weight. And starving myself meaning I was eating 12 to 1400 calories. I was able to lose 50 or 60 pounds, but I couldn't maintain it. And so I'm kind of hoping to find that to crack the code for my own body that will let me just live a healthier life at a realistic, sustainable weight. That's my overall goal, I think.
And hopefully in the next few sessions we can talk about this more. I never want to dismiss anybody's medical issues because I know that these are real things. However, when it comes to weight reduction, the body does respond incredibly well to your traditional caloric deficit,
Mm-hmm.
no
Yep.
matter what the hormonal issue is. We did talk about this last time. It can be one of many factors, but it's like that stock price metaphor that I give. There's
Yeah.
lots of factors on a stock price. In this case, one of those would be, well, the CEO got caught doing something shouldn't have been doing. Like that's really going to affect the stock price. But it doesn't mean that stock is a total no-go forever.
Right.
It's just
Right.
one factor that complicates the issue. And if we get
Yeah.
control of all the other factors by building your
Correct.
awareness and being strategic and getting you more into your life and having
Mm-hmm.
that align with your values and be more expressive of your values in your deeper self, then health issues that we have don't need to stand in the way. And I think
Yeah.
it's really helpful PCOS is now kind of the latest buzzword. If you want to make money in the online space, start selling PCOS coaching, because it's being diagnosed a lot right now, and it's being self-diagnosed a lot.
Right. Right. Well, and the thing that you got to be aware of, though, is that yes, there is the buzzword of the self diagnoses and things like that. But for a large percentage of women, it is a very real thing. And it really will mess you up, and it gets misdiagnosed when you go to the doctor and you're seeking help and they tell you
That's
it's all
true.
in your head. So I think to be very clear, it is a very real thing. Now there are some people that are maybe overusing it or underselling it, or however you want to use it as a crutch. But for my case, it actually could have killed me had it not finally
Oh
been
yeah.
diagnosed and treated, because I would have ended up with ovarian cancer and dead. And been told consistently, even though it took 10 years to get this fixed and solved and figured out, up until my deathbed, a doctor would have been telling me that, oh, I just needed to lose weight. And that was my whole
Yeah.
problem. And
Yeah.
so
And
you got to be very, very careful with that.
that would get us into a conversation about how the medical industry is just basically blind to people in
Yeah.
big bodies. Anything, if you're overweight, then we don't want to validate any
Yeah.
syndrome or whatever that you're dealing with. The major point I wanted to make was just for people out there listening to not mentally let these things get in your head,
Correct. Yeah.
because if you think that there's anybody out there who's 350 pounds and is in tip top metabolic condition, you're kidding
Right.
yourselves. And like
Right.
you're on one end of the spectrum where you're going to have more actual physical manifestations of that, and other people
Yep.
might be lucky and then maybe they don't have as much. But
Yeah.
let's be real, everybody's dealing with something that's haywire in their body if they have a significant amount of weight to lose,
Yeah.
and it's never been the defining factor. But I'm just trying to encourage people to not
Don't
get in their own way.
Yeah, what I would say is don't use it as a crutch, because like I think for a lot of years, especially the last few years, I've used it as a crutch. Like, oh, I've got a
Mm-hmm.
thyroid thing and I've got, PCOS symptoms that I still deal with, and all this. That has very much been a crutch. And so be aware of, yeah, you may have this metabolic thing, or you may have this physiological thing that's going on in your body, but what are you doing to contribute to that for the better or the worse, right? And I was being so lazy in my habits, and I was, just not loving myself and caring about myself enough to be honest with myself about it. And so I think that's been the biggest mind shift in the last couple of weeks. And I will also add this, is that, if you've been using these crutches, therapy is a great place, because
Mm-hmm.
like it will help you unpack whatever emotional issue you've been dealing with that's allowed you to continue to use the crutch.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and ultimately, it's not about kicking the crutch out from underneath someone. It's about giving them the internal support that they've always
mhm.
deserved.
Yeah, that
So,
the validation and the support to say, I am going to say the things that are hard to say and scary to say, and face them, and to be there in that corner to support it.
all right. Well, Tina, thank you very much.
Thank
I hope
you.
everybody gives Tina a big thank you in the Facebook group for being so vulnerable and being willing to share her process. Yeah, this is our first session, so this was a big
Yeah,
experiment as to how it could work in a podcast format. So, yeah, thank you for being so willing to just try this out.
absolutely. It's my pleasure, and thank you. I love what you're doing, and I love the start that we're on, and so I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was my first session with Tina. I hope you got a lot out of that. I hope that was interesting for you to see up close and personal what a first session can look like. They all have some similar characteristics, but every client, it always looks different for each individual. What we focus on, the action steps we pick, those are all really tailored to that person's exact, strengths, weaknesses, struggles, where they want to start, and of course, what's easiest. So don't feel like if you're crafting your own weight loss journey that you need to follow the exact steps that I gave to Tina, because those are for Tina. People in big bodies, as you remember from the episodes with Shay, when they go to the doctor, they're often not treated the same as somebody who's at a healthier weight. And there can be some logical reasons for this, like a doctor saying you need to lose weight to better this condition. In Shay's case, that was true, but Shay also needed to feel seen and to actually be treated as a human being. And Tina has definitely had her struggles with that. And it really gets us into another topic of how can you validate your adverse experiences or your health issues or what happened to you as a kid and understand the ways that these are going to impact your journey going forward, but also to see how they're going to impact the way you view your journey and the ways that that might be limiting your view of your ability, your agency, the options available to you. And so the trick is finding that separation, that line between where am I honoring what I've been through and the truth of what's happened to me versus where am I clinging to ideas or notions or beliefs that are going to limit me because they're not actually based in reality. And I do want to mention again that PCOS is a very important topic. I've actually been learning a lot about it the last year and a half because I've gotten so many questions about it. And I don't talk about it a lot because I'm still taking in as many perspectives as I can. But indications are that a lot of commonly held beliefs about menopause, male or female, metabolic rate changes that occur in middle life, that these might not be a thing at all. Or that they might be happening, but not for the reasons many people point to. But the big takeaway is kind of what we talked about in the podcast, that we just don't want to let our physical health act as a barrier. We're always looking for the easy way. So if our physical health is presenting a mental barrier, we want to pick that apart and pick it down to the studs of reality. And then what is real, our real limitations, we want to use acceptance to keep ourselves from being resistant to the reality of our limitations, while also being open-minded and present and willing to see the opportunities that we have to flow around whatever obstacles there are. Water always finds its way downhill, and that is my approach to weight loss. We can get there if we keep giving ourselves permission to take baby steps, the next step, the easy steps. And I think Tina has all the qualities and then some of someone who's going to be successful in this journey. And so I'm really excited to see where her journey takes her. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to, certainly in the Facebook group, but maybe in the podcast too, we can check in with her in a few months and see how things are progressing. Thank you for listening. That's all for now. I'll catch you next time.